Greetings and welcome back to Inside the Musician's Brain. I'm your host, Chris Pandolfi from the infamous Stringdusters. Thank you all so much for tuning in today. Got a great guest on today's episode. Bahamas will be joining me in just a few minutes. Bahamas is a very cool, very unique singer-songwriter. He's got a great new record. We're going to talk about all of that. Stick around for that. Quick word about my sponsors this season. Are you someone who loves gear that is not only functional, but also stylish? I know I am, and that's why I love Flylow, my favorite apparel brand of late. They make gear for skiing, for mountain biking, for chilling. I wear it on stage. I wear it fly fishing. This stuff does it all, and you look good while you're doing it. I actually bought a Flylow jacket off the shelf from a ski shop here in Colorado. When I first moved out here, this was like 14 years ago, I was trying to up my street cred in terms of my ski kit and picked the coolest jacket I could. It was a Flylow and it looks like new to this day. I kid you not. It's been great to get to know the people at Flylow and come full circle and have them on board as a sponsor here at ITMB for all your apparel needs. Check out Flylow. My other sponsor this season is Turtlebox. Turtlebox is the best USB speaker out there right now. This thing is rugged, it's waterproof, it's portable, the battery lasts all day, and best of all, it sounds great. You can crank it up nice and loud, and the audio quality is there. They've got their flagship speaker, which is a little bit bigger, and now they've got the Ranger, which is a smaller speaker, more portable, but still nice and loud with great audio quality for all your USB speaker needs. Make sure you check out Turtlebox. Inside the Musician's Brain is also brought to you by Osiris Media. Osiris is home to all kinds of great music podcast content. And we're brought to you by Americana Vibes. That's the infamous Stringdusters record label. And this season, I've partnered up with Volume.com, where the top acts go to stream shows, podcasts, and more. So you can see video of all of Season 6, including this episode, over at Volume for free. All you have to do is jump on there and make a profile. And I've got some of the best episodes from seasons past going up over there at Volume. And I'm going to do some kind of live Q&A event after episode 59 drops. So stay tuned to the pod. Stay tuned to my socials for more intel on that. That's all going to be going down right over at Volume.com. All right, let's get into it. We've got Bahamas, a.k.a. Afi Yurvinen, in the house today. This is a cat who has his own sound all the way, which I dig. Very original songs, great lyrics, very original, very recognizable production, which is very cool. And we talked about a lot of things, including his stellar new album, his creative process, and also the importance of being bored. Yes, you heard that right, the importance of being bored, which is really just a discussion about the vast influence that technology has on our day-to-day lives. That's coming up here in just a few minutes. And speaking of the vast influence of technology in this day and age, drum roll please, it's time to talk about the elephant in the room. That would be AI music. People are straight freaking out about AI music right now and how it's going to change the game, but contrary to popular belief, this might actually be the best thing ever for true artists, for roots music, for real music, for anyone who actually has something to say and is willing to put in their 10,000 hours honing their voice, their message, their craft. Right now, the bar is low and getting lower, and that will only speed up the process of overloading our digital world with mediocrity, ultimately causing fans to flock toward the real thing. So this is actually great news for real, authentic artists, and here's why. Unless you've been living under a rock for these last few months, you've heard about AI music generators, which are evolving at light speed right now. So I'm talking about Suno.com. I hear ChatGPT has one on the way. They are cranking out realistic, professional, freakishly tight music that upon first listen does not sound like it was made by a computer. And as an extension of that, we now have AI bands like Velvet Sundown making waves on streaming platforms. We have AI songs topping the charts. So we're not talking about the digital shortcuts and tools that already abound in the music creation space and have been around for years. We're talking about a website that allows anyone with a few prompt words to crank out complete pro-sounding recordings of new songs in a matter of seconds. Truly, anyone can get on there and do it. Anyone can make these crazy, almost freakish synthetic recordings. And with that, the barrier to entry for music creation has all but disappeared. So some creators are really freaking out about this, wondering if all that time learning how to play an instrument, write music, and perform was for naught. But is AI-generated music really a credible threat to artists? The reality is, this new wave of AI music is making so much noise, primarily because it's brand spanking new right now. It's incredibly novel, and like I said, it has some freakish capabilities you should go see for yourself. It's not making waves because it's good. I mean, it is maybe objectively good in some way, good at creating music that's tight and in tune and I guess correct. But is that what makes music good? Is that what draws people to music over time? The main reason it's getting all this attention is because it's new and it's so advanced, and new tech has a tendency to do this, right? It freaks people out when it's new to the scene, causes a panic about how things will change. But just like so many other elements of tech in music, it will fade and over time integrate into the larger creation landscape. Think drum machines, think digital recording. The list is long. Ultimately, it will become a tool, not a means to an end. And when that newness wears off, the buzz will fade because, newsflash, there is really nothing behind this AI-generated music. There's no story, there's no process, there's no experience, there's no shows, no tours, no soul. And this is a key piece to remember here. That wanting music from a fan's perspective, right? Being drawn to music, being a fan is not just about whether one specific piece of music is objectively good. It's about where it came from. It's about what's behind it, what it means. It's about the artist. It's about the story. That is what fandom requires. That is what fandom craves. And that is what AI-generated music lacks. That's why this podcast exists, right? To bring you in on the experience and the struggle, the learning, and all the energy that goes into the music that every single guest on here creates. Without it, music just has no staying power. The AI music trend is flashy and new, but ultimately, in my opinion, they're getting it all wrong. They actually remove the cool part from the music. That's the creation process, in favor of efficiency in a field where efficiency is not at all what's needed. Real emotion and experience, that's what's needed. You see, we artists, we love the process. We live for it. That's what it's all about. That's not a part you want to remove. That's the part that makes music into magic. That's the part that ties it to the human experience and imbues it with the power to connect. That's the part that makes music so damn good and so important to the human experience. So stay the course, my friends, because anyone who actually has something to say and is willing to put in the time and energy to hone your voice, your message, and then take it to the people, the end result will speak for itself, and you will be rewarded. Meanwhile, the newness of AI will fade, and fans will be craving something real in its wake. I'm telling you, people will revolt against this stuff, right? The pendulum always swings back the other way. And I think this process has been underway for some years, the lowering of the bar as music has become more DIY. And now we're kind of headed into this time warp, and on the other side, authenticity will shine. Couple side notes to the AI music discussion. Artists, don't be afraid to see what these AI music tools can do for you in terms of ideas, demos, lyrics, whatever, because the competition will be using it. And because why not? It might spur some creativity. It might get you headed in a good direction. Like I said, it's a tool. But ultimately, the real stuff will be up to you. The follow through will be up to you. And if you've got something to say, the people will know it. Another thing worth mentioning is that there's part of this AI music equation that's not new and not great for the industry per se, and probably not going anywhere. The truth is, Spotify has already been at this game for years now, pushing ghost artists. Not sure if you've heard of the ghost artists. These are artists that don't actually exist and are getting thousands upon thousands of streams for music that's generated by AI that Spotify can acquire super cheap and make tons of money off of. Great. It's widely used for like background applications, advertising, that kind of thing. Places where it's less likely to get noticed and always a cheaper option than the real thing. And I should say this is an area that's affected me directly. I've done a lot of this kind of work. I have hundreds of titles that are on TV shows and ads, and so do a lot of other musicians in my position. And I see the statements and I know that that work is drying up. But guess what? That's commerce. That's capitalism. That's life. It's adapt or die. That's the business side. I don't judge someone if they're using it as a tool, and I probably should too. Not complaining about that. And that's not really the music that I'm talking about today. Music exists in a lot of spaces in our world, but today I'm talking about the sacred place, the artistic side, the songs, the performances, and the artists behind them. That's sacred stuff. And guess what? It's not going anywhere. And hey, if I'm wrong about this, well, that means it's already too late, guys. The bots are on their way, and we're living in a Michael Crichton novel. So let's hope that's not the case. All right. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk today. It's time to jump ahead now to my interview with Bahamas. Here we go. All right, we're here on Inside the Musician's Brain, and my guest today is an amazing singer-songwriter with a very unique sound and an incredible catalog that goes back almost 20 years now. Afi Yurvanen, a.k.a. Bahamas. Welcome to the podcast, man.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
So you're on tour over in Europe right now. How's it going?
It's going great. We just did about a week in the UK. And yeah, I'm just playing solo on this tour, just playing acoustic guitar. And some beautiful venues, some churches, and yeah, I don't know, it's sort of, dare I say, the most relaxed tour I've ever been on. I mean, there's no production, there's no load in, there's no load out. I just show up with the guitar, I take it out of the case and I play it and I put it away and I walk away. It's like, I don't know, I started this tour as a kind of an eat, pray, love thing. I thought I would come over here and just try and find myself again. To be honest, I was feeling kind of lost a little bit, musically or creatively, just wasn't sure what I was doing. So I booked this tour a while ago, and yeah, it's been so fun. It's just great crowds. I don't make a set list. I just kind of get up on stage and start playing whatever sort of comes to mind. And there's been a few people, shout out songs, and I think, geez, could I play that? I've never, maybe I've never played that, or I haven't played that in 10 years or something. So, yeah, it's just been a lot of fun, and it's a pretty cool, luxurious place to be as a performer when people are shouting out like track 7 from your second album, or it's nice to know that the deep cuts are kind of resonating.
Yeah, man, you've got a hardcore fan base. I'm a fan, man. I gotta say, I love your music. I love this new record. We're going to get into talking about all that. But you just said something a moment ago that I think is really interesting. You said you were sort of feeling creatively lost a little bit. Can you tell me a little bit more about that and sort of how long that's been going on for and what that feels like?
I think it's probably just part of the process. When you or in my case, I should say, whenever I finish a recording, and I'm talking like right when I finish, that is the most confident I will ever feel as an artist, as a writer. When you're in the studio and you are working with great musicians and you're in the middle of that take and you realize that, man, this is the definitive take, and then so you try not to think about it because you just want to make it to the end, and like when you're hearing that back, there is nothing more energizing, more, I don't know, dare I say, inspiring. I don't really get high on my own supply. Like, I don't listen to my albums. But in that moment when you're making it and it's coming back at you and you realize, wow, this is the thing that I envisioned, even if you didn't know what shape it was going to take, when it sort of presents itself, that's the most exciting time. So the further you get away from that, at least for me, I always find I sort of enter this no man's land of like, what is it that I'm doing? Am I trying to represent that work that I made a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago? in many cases, I've already moved on and I'm writing new songs or even just sort of thinking about new ideas of how to do songs. And so, yeah, it's sort of, I don't know, it's sort of the doldrums a little bit. And I definitely found myself there after Bootcut. You know, I made this record in a great studio in Nashville with incredible musicians. And and it was a great experience. Like, it was just overwhelmingly positive. But after all the touring wrapped up and I was home for a while, I just thought, what am I doing? And this new album sort of, in some ways, is the complete opposite. I recorded this. It's as close to an indie rock record as I think I'm ever going to make. I made it with a great musician named Josh Van Tassel, and he has a studio, and the two of us would go in there every day and kind of just throw things at the wall. And I had some leftover songs from the Bootcut session, and then I would hear things and I would get inspired and I would go home and write something and then come back the next day and we would work on that. And so it was two very different types of recordings. But yeah, I think in between those places, there's always that sort of part of me that's questioning, who am I? What am I doing with my life? But I think that's probably the case if you are a musician or if you work in banking or if you are a construction worker, or you know what I mean? It's just like, maybe it's called midlife. I'm in midlife. And so there's maybe a little bit more of a questioning whether, all the choices have been good or not.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's very natural for artists and humans alike. And I
Mhm.
really want to talk more about this new record, and we'll get to that in a minute. But coming back to this idea of feeling your most confident when you finish a recording, because I think that's really interesting. And I feel like what I'm hearing you say is that the recording process, maybe for you more than the performing process, is like the best distillation of your view of your art or something like that. Would you agree with that? That the studio and the recordings are what you put kind of more stock in?
Um, I'm not sure if I put more stock in it. I think it's more just like this when you're in the studio and you're with the musicians, or maybe there's an engineer or producer there. It's like there's something so special about knowing that you have something great and nobody else knows about it. It's like
Sure.
the most
That's
special
cool.
gift. And whoever's in the room is sort of in on it, and everybody leaves that day. And I don't want to flatter myself and and think that the musicians are going home and telling their partners, "Oh my God, I just had a great day at work" or something. But for me, it feels like that. I go home and I'm just raving on, "You wouldn't believe what happened on the bass guitar today," or "We accidentally hit the wrong button and it just made the guitar just blow up," or something. Just those moments are they're so special and they're so private and they're so I'm not sure how I could explain them. I think they're just they're really intimate. And I think most musicians can probably relate to that in some way, just because, it's such a loaded thing when you're bringing these songs that you've crafted, that you've worked on. It's very difficult to not, I don't know, bring expectations into the studio. And the more often that I can sort of leave my expectations at the door and just go in and, as cliche as it sounds, just be present and listening and responding to things in real time, those are always the best recordings.
Well, I know I can relate strongly to that, to the idea that the studio offers a special kind of magic, because when you're in the studio, you're crafting the music that you're then going to go out and play for years to come. You're building the thing. And performance obviously offers its whole own magic. It's an outlet that is equally as captivating and stimulating, but when you're in the studio, it's like this is when you're crafting the actual music. And this new record it's interesting because I read some interviews with you, and it sounds like, and from the press release as well, when this record was coming about, you're coming off Bootcut, which was like a very formal, in the studio in Nashville with these great musicians and this sound that you were chasing. And then you're back in Nova Scotia, you're in this tiny studio, you're working sort of these unstructured sessions. And I read that you weren't even necessarily sure that this collection of songs would be an album. And then ultimately, to me, it's a really quintessential Bahamas record. And I was curious to see when or what it was that kind of made up your mind. Okay, this is definitely coming out as my next project.
Well, I think that's again, that's just part of the process for me. Is I think, like I said, when I finished this recording, I was so excited about it, and then because I was busy with other things, and really we were still touring on the Bootcut record. The cycles are two years or more long. So I was still touring on that record, and I think I just enough time passed where I started to doubt it, and I started to think, geez, is this the best thing I could do? Is this good? Like maybe I just was sort of like throwing stuff at the wall or whatever, but no, then it was really satisfying sort of reopening those tracks and listening to them and just being like, wow, this actually has a feel to it. I mean, dare I say vibe? I know that's probably the most overused word, but it does, from the first song to the last, really sort of have something to it. I can't even say what it is. Hopefully it's my voice and my sense of humor, and just the general tone of the record is sort of cohesive from front to back. But more than that, I just liked all the songs. I mean, I hate to like make it sound any more
I do
complicated
too,
than it
man.
is. It's like, yeah, there's just some, I always love, like, you know, when you have something that has a little bit of, like if things are too much of one thing, I always find that not as interesting. So if it's too serious, if it's too sad, then it's too much of a downer. It's harder for me to get into it. So I always like those things that have a bit of levity mixed in, or some humor or something that sort of balances that out. And I always kind of describe it as that Chicago mixed popcorn. You want the salty and the sweet kind of at the same time. And the song that I've used in the past to describe that is Willie Nelson's "You Were Always on My Mind," which, if you listen to the lyrics, it's like, it's such a heartbreaking, sort of devastating tune, but the delivery, like, it actually is such an uplifting song in how it makes me feel. Almost like it almost has a Chariots of Fire quality to it, where it's very triumphant, and he's delivering these lyrics that are just sort of devastating. So yeah, I always sort of look for that juxtaposition, and I certainly feel like this album has a lot of that.
Well, it's cool coming off Bootcut, because did I read that you did Bootcut at the Sound Emporium in Nashville?
Yeah, do you know that spot?
Oh man, I think my band has done a few records there, and I've played on many sessions. That's kind of my world, I'm the infamous
Yeah,
String Dusters. We're in that bluegrass world. So Sam
right.
Bush and some of those familiar names from that record. But I also am a lover of the studio, and I'm in my studio in Colorado right now, and I create solo records where I'll play all the instruments. And so the process for your latest record, my second last album, is very similar to that. And you were mentioning Joshua Van Tassel, and you guys just set out to basically go through a different process, it seems like, to bring this music to life. Like, it was more stripped down, and you guys were layering instruments, and you had the songs, but then it seems like the process just afforded you the opportunity to kind of take each song as it comes and build each track according to that feeling. Is that kind of how the process went down?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I didn't even tell my manager that I was recording. I just sort of booked the time,
I'm
and
sure he loved that.
yeah, it's not the first time, but yeah, I just it's not, like I said earlier, it's nice to be doing something when nobody knows you're doing it, and that way there's no expectations. There's no, like,
Yeah.
worst case scenario, we're in there and we come up with something that is completely useless. Then we just had fun in the studio. And I'm sure you've had days like that too, where it's not about the finished product, it's more about the process, and you're experimenting with sounds and techniques and all that kind of stuff, and if it was just that, I would be happy. But we ended up with a really cool recording that ultimately was an album, so yeah, Josh is just an incredible producer, and he's a great drummer. He's just, very relaxed energy, and just had great ideas, just when we were working out the songs, and especially about like how to track things, because I always find that strange when like you're tracking things just with two people, because you have to sort of use your musical imagination to, okay, I want to sort of leave a little bit of room for what the bass is going to do, or
Mm.
do I need to actually play that melody line on the guitar? Maybe I do, maybe I don't want to, maybe I want to let the piano do that line. So it's, that sort of stuff is fun and challenging, and Josh was just a great collaborator for that.
Well, like I said, in my opinion, the sound is very quintessential Bahamas. And what you mentioned a moment ago, the juxtaposition between the production, the sound of these tracks, and then the lyrical content, there's a lot going on. And I really dig that. You mentioned a second ago, and I read this in an interview as well, that you were even having, days during the session where you were inspired by what's going down and you'd go home and write a whole other song that night. Is that the norm for you, or is that a stretch?
I wouldn't say it's the norm, but it's nice to be in a position to, when you have an idea, to chase it down. I hate to, throw my kids under the bus, but I do have 3 kids, and when I go home, I I have, very little sort of creative time. Most of my writing I do when I'm like walking. I go out, just leave the house, and often with no instrument, and just sort of trying to come up with interesting lyrics, or something about walking always sort of induces the creative juices, just that
Yeah.
forward momentum. And so anyway, that works quite well for me. But yeah, it's nice when you're, if you have a little guitar line, or maybe you have a lyric, and if you're able to, in the moment, just chase it down, just spend the time, whether it takes 20 minutes or an hour or whatever. If you can just do that, I never regret that. I always find like that's, the idea is the freshest, and you're kind of the most open at that moment, rather than sort of, judging things before you even have a chance to say them out loud. You're more willing to just kind of get it out of your system because you have this excitement about a melody or something else. So yeah, I always sort of relish in those opportunities whenever they come. I wish they would come more often, but when they do come, you just got to be grateful for them.
I've been walking around my house the last couple days. Take me to the bridge and let me walk upon the wall. I love
Yeah,
MC
buddy.
Taylor, man. His Golden Messenger. He's been a guest here on the podcast. He's a buddy of mine. You guys
Yeah.
co-wrote that song. Tell me how that went down. I read that you guys co-wrote the lyrics over text. Is that right?
Yeah, it was more like he actually texted me that melody. He had that idea, and I even had a little demo of it, and he sent it to me, and right away I was like, oh, this is cool. And so I started writing verses, and started writing about my kids, and just sort of encouraging them to fail, and learning how to make mistakes, and get back up and fail, and get back up and fail, and that whole process, which uh, as a musician, it's so humbling, and I
Mm.
think it's so necessary in pretty much every part of life. So anyway, that's kind of how that track came together. But I didn't really know if we were writing a song for him or for me, or
Mm.
what we were doing. But he, ultimately, I just ended up really liking what we came up with, and so I kind of sent it to him with my fingers crossed, saying, "Man, I hope you dig this, but I think I'm going to put this on my next record." And he was like, "Right on." Seemed stoked on that. So yeah, I think during the pandemic, we sort of discovered that we were mutual admirers of each other's work. And that's when we started texting, and pretty quickly, we were sort of sending these ideas. Now we haven't done that for quite a while, and I would gladly get in the same room as him and see what happens. I think that'd be so fun. But just a huge fan of his writing and his albums, like just so consistently solid.
I totally agree, man. Mike's a really
Yeah.
talented cat. And you guys have a cool synergy. I hear it on that track. You both have very distinctive styles, but there's a really kind of cool crossover, and just a great record, man. Congrats. I've been listening to the heck out of it over here, and
Oh, thanks so much.
and I'm a fan. Now, you mentioned your kids a moment ago, and I know you're a big family man, and it sounds in a lot of ways like this record is kind of a reflection of where you're at in your life. I know you moved your family a few years back to a pretty remote spot in Nova Scotia, it sounds like, and just wanted to see how deliberate that is. Like I said, this record and the songs being kind of a reflection of where you're at.
I think it's most certainly a reflection. And
Okay.
yeah, when we decided to leave to Toronto, we actually considered, he said, well, if we were going to leave Toronto, where would we go? And we had spent some time in Europe together, and we thought, geez, well, that might be kind of cool. And then we thought about Los Angeles because I had made a record there, and I had, my labels there, and I have a lot of friends there, and there's just so much there's music, like there's just incredible musicians and studios, and there's a lot of sort of professional reasons to be out there. And then we kept on coming back around to this idea of Nova Scotia because we had gone out there for a honeymoon years before, and then we would go out and spend summertime there, and once we had children we would stay longer and longer, and so anyway we ended up sort of choosing that place. I definitely didn't move there for any professional reasons. It's
Well, I was going to say,
very
like,
much so.
LA, Nova Scotia. I mean, those are two very different options.
But it was kind of cool to think about it that way, because it's sort of like if we did move to LA, I think I would definitely want to be, participating in all these amazing things that are happening on a random Tuesday night. There's just like great music happening, and if you're there and you have a chance to be a part of it, that's what it's about, But no, we sort of just came back to this idea of actually slowing things down. And the pace of life in Nova Scotia is quite a bit slower, I find, and that suits me very well. I mean, I get to travel, and I guess I kind of get to have my cake and eat it too a little bit, right? I just get to travel for music, and right now I'm in London, and like outside my hotel room is just big city energy in as much as you want, and I really do love going home to something that's a little bit more. I don't know, the scale of it is just a little bit more, I don't know that human's the right word, but it's just so much more understandable, And so Nova Scotia's sort of stuck in time, I think, in a good way. Like, I don't know where my kids are half the time. They're out with their friends or they're out in the woods. And the access to nature there is just unbelievable. And I'm sure it is in Colorado too. But yeah, it's that's sort of the big draw for us, is just being by the ocean, which has such a huge energy to it and sort of rules your day-to-day life. And then, yeah, just the kids are growing up in a way that I think that probably maybe you and I grew up in, like I said, They have a lot of freedom, and they get on their bikes and they're gone, or they take the bus downtown and they're, going to head shops and like buying, beads and things. Like, I don't even know what they're doing. It's just amazing. And they're just thriving. And so, really love it out there. And, yeah, it'll be 7 years in January that we've been there. And so I feel very lucky. I took for granted how easy it was to travel from Toronto, though. That was the big trade-off, is sort of realizing that everything is a connecting flight for me. So, that was a big adjustment, coming out of the pandemic and starting to tour again and just traveling again. But, I'm certainly of the mind that it's worth it because of the lifestyle that it sort of affords us.
Oh man, I'm jealous. I mean, that sounds amazing. And it's hard to achieve these days, and you're correct. I feel very grateful for having grown up, and I think you were born, I think 1981, is that right?
Yeah.
I'm a year older than you are. So yeah, I mean, we grew up riding BMX bikes around the neighborhood, and our mom never knew where we were, and it was like incredible it's incredible to reflect and see how that influenced me and the kind of person that I've become, and the creativity too. I mean, I have to assume that being in a place where you're not subject to a zillion devices and everything that's going on social media, that and of course great for raising kids, but I'm sure that's probably great for your art too. I mean, do you feel that?
I think it probably is in a sort of indirect way. I mean, like, I'm not fooling. I have an iPhone. We're doing this, I got my AirPods in right now. Like, there's certainly lots of, you know, there's lots of modernity out there if you want to plug into it. But we are trying to actively sort of live a bit of a lifestyle that's maybe just a little slower overall when it comes to pretty much everything. Just not being in a rush. And the main thing that I figured out a long time ago, and I'm trying to just sort of pass on to my kids, is that being bored is the most important part of creativity. I find if I'm constantly listening to other music or podcasts, or everyone's like, oh, have you seen this HBO show or Netflix or this or that? Like, we are constantly being bombarded with entertainment, not to mention the news, which is basically entertainment now. So I find I can't sort of like get to that deep creativity unless I allow myself to be bored and just turn off all that other stuff. And like I said, the walking is really great, and just, something about that really inspires things. So whenever my kids say, I'm bored, I say, great, just sit with it. Just wait 5 minutes. And I guarantee you, your creative brain is going to kick in, and it's amazing watching them. They, like if we're at the cottage or something and they don't have something that they wanted to bring, or that's at the house, it's amazing. They'll just grab some plastic cups or something, and they'll start inventing a game. Okay, you stand over there. This is how it's going to go. Like, it's just happening, and it's all coming from boredom. The other day, my wife sent me a video. There was a rope hanging from a tree with a stick on the bottom, and they had invented a game where they were kicking it to each other. And when it comes towards you, you have to kick it. And if you miss it, then the other person gets a point, right? So they had invented this game in what does that take? 25 seconds? But they had been playing it all afternoon. And it was just sort of a satisfying little moment as a parent, when you see your
I
kids
love
kind
to
of
hear
doing
that.
just silly stuff like that. It's just so great.
That's so cool. And it's so true. Such a great reflection, that this idea that boredom, or even just the space where you're not being inundated by devices, TV, social media, news, people barely enter that space these days. Everyone's got their phone out 24/7, but in that space, something starts to happen, something very human. And I think, like you said, we get down to a layer of creativity that we all have. And I know when I grew up, we used to go to this cabin in the woods with no electricity and a propane stove, and we'd go up there on the weekends, like all through the summer growing up. And my two brothers and I are all very creative in our careers and otherwise. And I swear that's why that creativity got kicking, just because our parents put us in a space where, just like you say, we were bored. I never really thought about it that way, but it opens up that space for you to kind of sink down and see what's a layer beneath the you that's just reacting to everything that's coming in constantly, or something like that.
I actually think that's where everything is. I think daydreaming is so important. I think boredom's so important. I think those are the spaces that allow you to connect things that are seemingly unrelated. And I actually heard a cool description of that. And then they were just describing, the apple fell from the tree and hit Newton on the head. And from that, he deduced gravity. These two things are worlds apart, but somehow, this process transpired right there in the moment, and it's just that very idea of just sort of like giving space and being able to sort of like, dare I say, see the matrix. If you're only focused on one point of it, and especially when you're consuming, I don't know how much people are really actually understanding. They might be consuming, but I don't know how much you're really digesting, So I think it is really important to carve out space, and I don't make any judgments with people if they want to be on their phone all day. It's all good. But I've just found, for me, I like the days where am not engaged with that, those are generally days that I feel better, largely because I just was doing things that made me feel good, whether it was creative things or went for a hike or was exercising or just did something with the kids. Like those things are actually energizing. And then at the end of the day, you go to bed tired, but it's like the best kind of tired. It's the hiking, camping tired where you
Yeah.
just have the best sleeps because you've actually been doing something that was so worthy of your time. And yeah, I just never end up feeling that way on the days where I either have to spend too much time or just end up spending too much time, on the phone or the computer or whatever. And for me, the threshold's pretty low.
Yeah, I think that's cool. It's like Newton
Yeah.
wasn't really looking for anything that day, and then boom, out of nowhere. And I really relate to that too. I think in a lot of ways, life is just a journey to understand yourself better and giving yourself
Hmm.
that space to figure out what's in there, like you say, the boredom, the quiet time. And I know for me sometimes, just like that Newton analogy, because I'm a person, I charge at things, and today I'm going to write songs and tomorrow I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And I've noticed as I get a little bit older, I create some space in my life creatively and also just as a human, just again to sort of see what's in there. I
Mm.
create some space to just let things come in without an agenda, and that could be songwriting or again, it could just be like trying to understand yourself a little bit better. But creating those spaces, it's got to be something pretty deliberate. And you mentioned like as far as songwriting, you'll go on a walk. Are there other ways that you feel like you try and open up that space to write songs or just go a little bit deeper?
Um, you know what? I wish I could give you a sort of like, here's my method. This is how I do it. But over the years, I've realized that the best thing I can do is just be open, not be tied to any specific piece of equipment or space. I don't have a studio. Um, I don't have a, yeah, I don't, I feel like it's actually a skill to be able to write a song with nothing in your hands wherever you are. And so that's something that I've realized, geez, I'd like to develop that skill even more and more and more. And yeah, so I've written songs on the piano. I've certainly written them on the guitar, and I've written them just tapping away on the steering wheel in the car, and
Mm.
on walks and things like that, getting ideas and crafting those. But I think I think like I said, the more than anything, it's just giving yourself time for those things to happen. And also just living life away from music. It's when you're putting out a record. I really like all the marketing and all the, just the, how are we going to put this out? What is the look of it? What is the story that we want to tell people? And I do like to be quite involved with crafting those ideas, and that can be sort of really consuming. And at the same time, you have to just completely walk away from it and, go have a water gun fight with your kids, or you have to go do something that is just the antithesis of that sort of really immersive, indulgent activity, which is, certainly having a career in music can feel like that, right? So there's a good part about that, because it is just so satisfying to be able to make things and you know make things that didn't exist. It's like having a superpower. Sometimes it feels like, just to be able to conjure things.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I don't know. I sort of, yeah, I don't take it for granted, and the nice thing is I still enjoy it. I like doing it. It's just I did it long before it was my profession, um, and before it was my career or anything. And I would imagine I'll do it after, when people stop sort of caring about what the music I'm making. I'll still do it just because it's like it's fun. I like
Yeah.
doing it. I like trying to find interesting ways how to put the words together, and then, you know, trying to turn that into a piece of music is just it's a creative puzzle that sort of never ceases to amaze.
Speaking of the creative puzzle, I'd love to talk a little bit more about your songwriting process because we touched on that part of songwriting where the first kind of seed of the idea comes in. And I think oftentimes that can be like the really exciting part. You know, I've got this hook or this idea that I'm going to chase down. But what about finishing songs? Do you feel like that's another phase of songwriting for you? Do you feel like that's kind of another skill? How does that process go down?
Generally for me, it's sort of that Rick Rubin idea. I guess he's probably the most successful and famous proponent of this idea, but it is about the less is more approach. I think that's probably pretty obvious to anyone that listens to my music, but I'm always trying to say, what can I pull away from this and still have the meat of the message, the import of the song? How can that get through? And so yeah, that's resulted in sometimes it's just an acoustic guitar and a vocal, and you know, and then yeah, so that's a big part of the process. Is once you've done all the recording, it's really just spending some time muting things off. And did we just make it better by getting rid of that thing that we worked so hard to record? And you have to be ruthless.
I love that.
Yeah,
and,
you have
and
to be.
production.
I mean,
It
I
seems
guess
like
that's something that you can do more as a solo artist. I feel like I'm definitely ruthless with what's there. I think if you're a band, maybe it is more challenging because everyone wants to feel like they're contributing. But yeah, I mean, that is something that I'm aggressive about. You know, if it's not working for me, I just get rid of it. And usually that, I mean, so far it's worked pretty good.
I think that's really cool, and I get that because, like in my opinion, production is such a big part of your game. Like the sound, the sound of a Bahamas record. Again, this last record to me is like a very quintessential sort of example of your sound, and it's so sick, man. It's really unique. It's like it's kind of like retro, but it's modern. Obviously, it's very, you know, laid back, and it's got this like
Mhm.
easy feel to it. And I really dig that, man. I wanted to ask you, like, who are some of your influences on that front, production wise, the sounds that make an album
Mhm.
amazing?
That is one of the hardest questions to answer. I mean, if it like the music that I listen to the most, honestly, is like J. Cole and um like hip hop, basically. Just mostly
Really?
just because the lyrics, like I find the lyrics in hip hop, like the way that they're able to sing about modernity and like the life that we are living now. I find that is really challenging as a singer songwriter to do. Like it, even there's some words like email, like try putting the word email in a song. It just
Mm.
sort of like it's so hard, and it often just will take the listener out of the song. Whereas in hip hop, like those guys are able to just like seemingly do anything with lyrics, and I just find that really inspiring. So that's probably what I listen to most. And plus, I just like that when I'm working out and moving my body and stuff. But um, yeah, I think the sound of things, in general, I'm always trying to just sort of like document things. And that comes from a love of for bluegrass music. I mean, one of my favorite albums, if not the favorite, Church Street Blues by Tony Rice, is like,
Come on, man. You're talking my language now. that
yeah, I mean
that record is
that
unbelievable.
it's unbelievable. And never once when you're listening to that record would you ever think to yourself, oh, this would be better if it had bass. This would be better if it had
Yes.
drums. This would be, that thought never comes in the mind. So what is it about it? Oh, you realize that this person is so talented and has chosen the material so well. Like they're able to deliver exactly what I was saying earlier. The heart of the song comes through, and there's almost nothing between the performance and the listener. And it's almost like classical music where you're just putting the mics up and you're trying to capture the best possible recording you can of an incredible performance. And it's more about the fidelity than it is about
Mm.
manipulating the sound at all, you know? So that's always kind of in the front of my mind when I'm recording. And then of course, by the complete opposite token, sometimes there's just you want to take an electric guitar and turn the volume up
Mm.
to 10 and hear what that sounds like too, right? So, Yeah, I think again, Josh was a great collaborator because he knows a lot more about producing and just effects pedals and things like that. I mean, not that we used a ton of them, but he certainly, like, if I had an idea, geez, I'd like that to be, I'd like to have some effect on there that makes it seem like a memory or something like that, as opposed to just right out in front. And what I'm actually just saying is put some reverb on it. But of course, the artist part of me is like, has to use this flowery language to describe it. And Josh is like, yeah, no problem. And he'll bring up an option like, great, that sounds awesome, But yeah, I think actually I would say His Golden Messenger records. I have been listening to a fair amount of those the last few years, and then just guys like Bob Dylan. Like, there's certain things that are sort of perennial for me. I go back to, but and those ones are really, they're really just great musicians in the studio. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I not to take anything away from the engineers or the producers or anything of those records, but it really is about the performances and just getting the best ones you can. So yeah, I have this dream of one day making an album like Church Street Blues where it's just guitar and vocal. I mean, that's what I'm doing on tour, right? And there's, right now I think I could probably do 2 songs. I feel like it might take me my whole life to get like 10 or 12 songs worth of material that I could just do.
I love that you brought up
solo.
Church Street Blues. And just
Yeah.
for reference for our listeners out there, go check it out. Tony Rice, one of the seminal Tony Rice records. And it's cool. First of all, when you're about to go, hey, this is one of my most influential records, I did not think that's where you were going. But I love that you said that, because there is the most brilliant minimalism in that record. And it's just like you said, it just simply needs nothing more. And that solo environment creates the format for what I believe Tony Rice's rhythm guitar playing on Church Street Blues. I mean, just about anything, but on Church Street Blues, in that solo environment where there's no other instruments, I'm like getting chills just even talking about it. Like, the complexity and the fully formed musical idea there, like the way he accompanies his singing. And oh my God, it's just incredible. But then I think about this new record that you just put out and a lot of your stuff, and I hear that minimalism too. And I love what you said about being ruthless about, is this helping the song? And so, like, for this new record, did you go in and, like, because there are a lot of really cool slinky beats and like these thumpy bass sounds that really sit in this very cool place that helps the song. Would you go in and track like a basic version where you were on guitar and then kind of go and layer on top of that? Would you track a live version, the two of you? How did it go down?
In general, we would do like a guitar vocal, and then Josh would play drums, or a piano vocal with the drums. And then once we had that, then we would, move on to the bass guitar or whatever. But I mean, the bass is probably my favorite instrument to play. I love playing bass on albums. Whenever somebody asks me to play bass, I always try and say yes, just because it's so much fun. And I'm definitely guilty of being like a guy who plays guitar on bass. I love those sort of melody lines and just the way that
I dig it, man.
Yeah, I love the way the bass sort of, like, in a lot of ways kind of, propels the band. I mean, with all due respect to drums and the other instruments, like, I feel like bass kind of has the most influence over, the energy of the song. And so that's sort of my favorite instrument. So generally we would always do that right afterwards. And that would sort of set that foundation. But yeah, it's more like, oftentimes when I'm doing like vocals, I'll do a lot of stacks of vocals, only to realize that, like, actually, you know what? Just doing a unison thing there is better. And so you'll spend like an hour or two sort of building up a big harmonic stack of a 3-part thing or something, and then maybe you get rid of all that. Or same thing on guitar. Maybe you want to double the guitar or something, and then you realize, it's kind of just more charming if it's one little guy, sort of this character that's playing, instead of like a scripted line. Maybe it is a little bit more improvised, just kind of a little character that's going for a walk at the end of the tune. So again, yeah, it's sort of you doing a lot of recording and then being ruthless and just getting rid of the things that aren't working.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
Because I don't necessarily think about it that way. I mean, I don't think about the subtractive element of producing as much. You know, that's just like a different way of looking at it. I mean, I'm always
Sure.
thinking, oh, what sound can we add? And then, of course, there's always a time to go through and see what's there and make sure you're still on track. But
I do it with pretty much everything. Like I'll do it with the drums. Like sometimes, I find a lot of people want to put a lot of mics on the drums. I like 2 mics, 3 mics, and I'm always trying to even get rid of those. Like maybe it sounds better with one. Maybe, Um, yeah, I don't know if it's phase or what. I'm sure there's other smarter engineers who could, speak to why that is. But I often find actually when you put more mics on there, the drum set sounds smaller to me.
hmm,
And sure, you might have more, toms, or you might have more whatever. But if you want sort of like that, you want to feel it in your gut, I always find like as few mics as possible seems to give me that more. So I'm always in there. Turn that off. What if you just had an overhead and a kick? Maybe that's a good play, and that seems to work pretty good for me.
I've actually done a very similar thing. I've done a bunch of recording for my solo project with one of my favorite drummers who's actually on, I think, all the Hiss records, Nick Falk. He's
Really?
actually in Camp, the band Camp now, and Hiss
Yeah.
has a different drummer on tour. But Nick and I would go in to record and we would do a cut, just the two of us. And then I just was like, man, let's just record just some drums. And then we kind of built out this sample library and it was this very minimalist stuff, but less mics. Less is more, man.
Hmm.
In recording, you really, again, coming back to like the Rick Rubin idea, what is the essence of this song is such a crucial, like, producing view, I think. I love that.
Yeah, and I mean, you listen to Gillian Welch, Tony Rice, like, there's so many examples in that acoustic world that are like that. Even Nils Fromm or Chili Gonzalez on the piano side, like those guys, those solo piano records by Gonzalez are amazing, and it's literally just piano. That's it,
Yeah.
and that's a modern contemporary recording, and it sounds like that. It doesn't sound like, you know, it's not some period piece or whatever. It's like this
Sure.
is music that's just evocative of right now, and yeah. So I don't know. I'm always kind of looking for that, and I feel that way about language too. I feel like I appreciate the Bob Dylan, like just like firing off as many words as possible, but the songs usually that hit me the hardest are the ones that just sort of say the line and that's the line. I always think of Neil Young's Harvest Moon. He if you listen to that song, he's so incredibly patient because he says the line and then there's a full rotation of that riff, between
Hmm.
every single line. And you have so much time to just digest that, when we were strangers, I loved you from afar. And you're like, oh, that's so good.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and then, okay, when we were lovers, I loved you with all my heart. Oh, it's just sort of, it's just incredible the amount of patience that is sort of displayed in that song. And I find that kind of stuff inspiring.
Very cool. Hey, tell me
Yeah.
really quick before we wrap up. I'm just curious to hear how you're on tour right now. Do you still love going out and playing shows?
I do. I mean,
That's awesome.
I'll admit that the travel kind of, wears you down a little bit. And so, you gotta make good decisions so that you don't get grumpy or unhealthy or whatever. And I think I'm getting pretty good about that. But yeah, it's tough to be away I know everyone feels that way, but it is tough to be away and, miss the kids and just not be there for all that. But the music's, I mean, dude, it sounds cliche, but it's like, I just can't believe that anybody cares. I'm still in awe. I mean, I know that sounds maybe fake humble or whatever, but like, we're seven out. This is the seventh album, and it's like I haven't been over here for I don't know 8 years. Like I sort of booked these shows thinking like, geez, I wonder if anybody still cares. And to be able to play these rooms and have people said, like I said earlier, just shouting out songs that I did 15 years ago or
Yeah.
something. It's like it's the most touching thing and really meaningful, So
That's so great, man.
that's sort of a long-winded way of saying yes, I'm loving it, and I'm playing a lot of acoustic guitar, and try and do some Tony Rice songs at soundcheck and stuff. But I don't know if I do them justice, but
What's your
it's fun
go-to
to.
Rice song for a sound check?
One more night, stars are out tonight, which is a
Oh
Bob
yeah,
Dylan song.
yeah.
But his version of it, is so cool, and you get to really just go hard on the guitar and stuff.
Do you love performing solo?
I actually do. Like I just find it's really, like I said, I don't make a set list. I just sort of get up there and start playing, and I just find it so liberating. It's probably like as close to being in a jam band as I'll ever be, because the songs can, I can extend sections, and I can do whatever I want. Some nights I'll take a song that I played the night before, and I'll play it with a capo on or something, and I'll try and play in a different position. And I find that really exciting for my musical mind, and I hope that, I'm not bending things too out of shape for the audience who wants to hear the song. But yeah, I don't know. It's really just it's so different from what I normally do. So in some ways, it's sort of it harkens back to what I did in the beginning. When I first started,
Right.
I played a lot solo, mostly just because I couldn't afford to bring a band, and I played solo, and then I toured with the drummer, just guitar and drums for like quite a while. And so yeah, it's sort of that bringing things back to the elemental is always rewarding when you kind of crack the code on a song and you figure out how to do it and represent all those things, and you realize, geez, I don't need to play that riff that I thought was like a big hook of the tune.
Sure.
I don't need to do it. I can just let the song do the work.
Do you do anything to like get focused or get prepared to go on stage for these shows? It sounds like it's a very kind of natural endeavor, but what is getting ready for a show like that look like?
Well, I try and just make good decisions during the day just basic things in what I eat and what I do with my, try and walk around a little bit. But I do like to play guitar for quite a while. Um, I I don't need to sound check for more than like 4 minutes, because
Mhm.
I just put a mic on the guitar. Like I don't even use a pickup. So I don't use monitors. I don't use anything. So I just get up there and play. So I don't really like the sound check isn't for sound. It's for me to play. And I usually play for an hour,
Mm.
just on stage, and just, get used to the sound in the room. If it's a beautiful old church and you have a lot of reverb, that can be really nice. But sometimes like just sort of dirty club is really fun too. And you realize that there's like a freezer in the back room that sort of has a low buzz to it. And that's just like becomes part of my soundtrack, even if no one else hears it or whatever. But
Think
yeah,
about all the
so
lessons you learned in a dirty club somewhere about your music and life and
I'm
such.
still learning
It's
them, man.
amazing.
I'm still learning them. But yeah, I try and play guitar, and just sort of, I can tell when I haven't played enough, because especially my right hand, I find I'll have a lot of tension in it, and just because
Mm.
I flat pick, the best nights are always the one where the wrist feels loose and the hands just feel. I'm not overplaying, and I don't mean overplaying like too many notes, because I'm certainly capable of playing too many notes. I mean actually like pressing too hard or picking too hard.
Mm.
I don't know if you find this, but I just find with guitar, and pretty much every instrument actually, oftentimes when you hit the instrument harder, it's not necessarily the nice parts of the instrument that get louder. It's like the harsher parts of it. Sometimes you'll
Yeah.
hear a fret buzz, or there'll be something there it's like you want to have that relaxed quality, so that the instrument can really sing in its sort of voice.
Totally
So
agree
yeah,
with
just
that.
try and have loose hands, relaxed hands, and I just find if I can play for an hour or two before I go on, even if I'm just noodling around in the dressing room, I'm not rehearsing anything specific. I'm just moving around on the fretboard, and
Yeah,
yeah.
being relaxed is about the best thing you could strive for on stringed instruments, especially. What you're saying is so incredibly true. And I feel like when I practice these days, especially when I'm practicing banjo, the main thing that I'm working on is the muscle memory of being relaxed, because then you get
Mhm.
to a show and, there's energy in the room and it's easy to play into that. And you want to play into that, you need to, but it's not about playing too hard. It's not about
Yeah.
overplaying. And oftentimes being relaxed is not only what brings the best sounds, but is also the most powerful sound. It's
Yeah.
how you have impact as a musician, I think.
I mean, this is like maybe not as interesting, but I actually think that a lot of like injuries and stuff come from having too much tension, right? Like,
Yep.
I don't know, it's carpal tunnel or whatever, but like it's not only does it not help you in the moment, it's actually like it's going to hinder you long term from accessing more music over the years, right? So I've just started to like, even in between songs, I just open my hands and like put
Yeah.
them on my sides and just try and be loose, and then get back into position and play the next song and just try and sort of reset, just in case I'm carrying anything in there.
That's a whole other podcast interview right
It
there,
is,
man.
yeah. We're
I
talking about physical therapy here.
Seriously, no, I've been
Yeah.
all the way down that road and had a bad injury that I had to come back from. And then, it's like anything in life, man. Adversity, it offers you a chance to grow. And it really was a blessing in disguise for me, and opened the door ultimately to figuring out how to finally play relaxed, because I
Hmm.
needed to, because this other way of
Yeah.
playing wasn't serving me. Lessons you can only really learn on the job, I guess.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna have to have you back on the pod at a later point so we can go deeper on this topic. For now, I want to be respectful of your time. I think because today's your day off on tour, right? So
Today's my day off, and I'm going to go meet my cousins from Finland have flown in, so we're going to go have supper here in about 10 minutes.
how cool, man. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much, Afi, for joining me today, man. Congrats on the new record, and best of luck on tour. And one of these days, I'm going to come track you down when we're playing at the same festival to say hey. But for
Please
now,
do.
thank you so much for joining me on Inside the Musician's Brain, man.
Thank you. I enjoyed the chat.
Absolutely.